I welcome you to CEC lecture series. I'm Nupur Chawla, teaching English literature at Maitri College, Delhi University. But today's lecture, I would say, is a special lecture, right? Because it is Teachers' Day and we are sparing a thought to education. We are sparing a thought to discussing, what education is, what is learning, who are the educators, what is the role of educators, and also taking some time to think about, to reflect on the words of the learned, people in India's legacy, right? And I would say that India has had various personalities that are hailed as inspiring teachers, and we have picked one today to dive deep into their mental landscape, into their value system, and understand that what did education mean to them and what approach did they have to it. So in the previous lecture, we kind of introduced Swami Vivekananda, and we also started discussing what education meant to him, and we said that he shares a philosophical perspective on education. So we'll once again very quickly go over what exactly he says, right? So for him, he says all knowledge is within the mind. So it is not the books that carry knowledge, but instead it's all in the mind. And you might wonder that what does he mean that all knowledge is in the mind, right? He says because real knowledge or a person can be said to actually have acquired knowledge when that person acquires or develops an absolute mastery over his own thoughts. So for him, that awareness about this ability of one's mind is the real knowledge. And he says that the thoughts of the senses should be an individual's servants and not the masters. So when this kind of an approach appears in an individual, and they become aware of this ability that they have or their mind has, that according to Vivekananda is the beginning of all real education, right? Then he also goes on to say that education is not filling the mind with lots of fact, perfecting the instrument of mind and getting complete mastery over my mind is the ideal of education. If I want to concentrate my mind upon a point, it goes there, and the moment I call it, it is free, unquote. So once again, he reflects on the entire process of what it means to control one's mind, right? So first of all, he makes it very clear that education is not about filling the mind with facts. So if you are kind of rote learning, or you're trying to gather as many facts as you can, that is not education. But real education actually, as he uses a phrase, is perfecting the mind, perfecting the instrument of mind. It's a very beautiful phrase that he uses, and also getting a mastery over it. Now you would notice that he also verges into a bit of a spiritual insight into, or I would say a spiritual take on education, right? And I would say that the two cannot be separated, because we need to be very well aware of our place in the cosmos and then connect it to all the endeavors that we undertake every day. And I would say that Swami Vivekananda's thought on education actually reflects that. Now, the next point that we make is that Swami Vivekananda's thoughts on education also veered towards national advancement. So he did visualize that how a nation's progress is hinged upon the quality and the kind of education that is provided to the masses. So let us look at this quote where he says, "A nation is advanced in proportion as the education and intelligence is spread amongst the masses. If we are to rise again, we shall have to spread education among the masses. Through education comes faith in one's own self. And through faith in oneself, the inherent Brahman wakes up. So the first thing that he says is that, a nation is advanced in proportion to the education and intelligence which is spread amongst the masses, right? So he is not only talking about education, but he also is talking about intelligence, right? That a nation's progress, that is how it is charted, through the kind of, or one can say through the level of education that exists in its countrymen, right? And he says that therefore we must ensure that education is spread amongst the masses. Now then he answers that why is it so important for national progress for the people to be educated? Because he says through education comes faith in one's own self, and through faith in oneself, the inherent Brahman wakes up. The infinite power is latent in the individual soul, and from the ant to the perfect man, there is the same Atman in all, the difference being only in manifestation. So we shall have to call forth that power through the right type of education by going from door to door amongst the masses, unquote. Now here he is making a very important point, right? He is actually showing such confidence in the human race. He says that all of us have this infinite power within us, but he says it is latent. Latent meaning it is there, but it needs to be activated, right? So this activation becomes the purpose of education. He says that we have to call forth that power through the right type of education. Yes, and he says that we need to do that by going door to door amongst the masses. Now you see, this is what I would say really distinguishes great minds. The kind of faith that he has in human being and in human potential is incredible. And that is how, his ideas, his thoughts even ring true today, which is 2 centuries later, right? The third thing that we say about, his thoughts on education, as we also mentioned in the beginning of our initial lecture, was that he had a secular approach. What do we mean by secular? He was very well aware that our country had various different social sections, right? And it was a challenge to ensure education reaches all corners of the country, right? But then he had something very important to say to this. In fact, I would say a suggestion in this regard. And let's see what Swami Vivekananda had to say about that. And I quote, he says, "Suppose you start schools all over India for the poor. Still, you cannot educate them. The boy of 4 years would better go to plough or to work than to your school. If the ploughman's boy cannot come to education, why not meet him at the plough, at the factory, just wherever he is?" Unquote. Again, a very mature and a very, very evolved thought. Why do we call it evolved here? First, he is not restricting education to these institutions. He is not restricting education to just the 4 walls of a school or of a college. He is very, very realistic. He says that the poor boy whose family does not have 2 square meals to eat will be forced to work by his circumstance. So he says we cannot expect such a boy to come to our school. Instead, we need to ensure that education reaches him at the place where that little boy is working. So you see, he has had the thought of even the poorest boy in mind, and how can that poor boy be educated as well. a very realistic approach, right? Not pedestalizing, schools, universities, etc. Yes, they are important, but at the same time, the circumstances, the reality, the social reality made Vivekanand think about this as well. Next, when we think about his, secular approach to education, it's not just that he had, the thought in mind about the poor, but instead I would say that it's the masses that he had actually considered, right? And he says this when he's talking about real education, right? He summarizes that what real education is for the individuals. He does that in the following quote. He says, and I quote, "You consider a man as educated if he can pass some examination and deliver good lecture? The education which does not help the common mass of people to equip themselves for the struggle for life, which does not bring out strength of character, a spirit of philanthropy, and the courage of a lion, is it worth the name? Real education is that which enables one to stand on one's own legs." Unquote. Now, here he is having a conversation and he says that you consider somebody that can pass certain examinations and can deliver a good lecture as educated. He says no. Unless a certain set of values are traceable in an individual, we cannot call them educated. So, what are these values? First is the strength of character. In fact, even before that, he says somebody that is equipped for the struggles of life. They do not back down. They have the strength to go through the challenges of life. Second, they should have a strength of character, which means that under extreme circumstances as well, the person does not compromise on their principles. Next, a spirit of philanthropy. So, for him, education was not just about your own self, your own struggles, your own character, but instead it also went beyond the individual too, which means that there, according to Vivekanand, there needs to be a spirit of philanthropy, which means doing good for others, right? Which also is a very important aspect of somebody that we call educated. And also, he says that there should be a courage in such a person. The courage to face the circumstance and courage to be themselves. And that's how he, also ends the quote when he says, real education is that which enables one to stand on one's own legs. Right? It does not mean just physically standing on one's own legs, but which means being independent. Independent in thought, independent in life, independent also in the way in the choices you make and how you own up your mistakes. You do take responsibility for what you do. So you see, one would feel that this is a very short span to traverse such deep ideas, such deep and enriching thoughts of Swami Vivekanand. But I would say that, let this be an occasion where we are acquainted with his thoughts, his ideas, and this should, I would say, inspire or encourage you to read a bit more and pick up the texts or which actually tell us about Vivekanand, right? Now, apart from the fact that he gave us the purpose of education, he made it more rational. He had in mind even the ones that are the downtrodden. At the same time, and he also talks about education for nation's progress. At the same time, he also emphasized on women's education. So you see, this is what makes him out and out a secular minded individual. He had in mind a very important part which he knew has suffered since ages, not just in one part of the world, but almost everywhere, right? And he says this to his disciple Sharat Chandra Chakrabarti, and quoting the scriptures. So this is where he is talking about women's education, and let's look at that quote. He says, "If you do not raise the women who are the living embodiment of Divine Mother, do not think you have any other way to rise." In an assembly of 1,000 Brahmans who were all erudite in Vedas, Gargi boldly challenged Yajnavalkya. Since such ideal women were entitled to spiritual knowledge, why shall not the women who have the same privilege now? Right? So he says that if Gargi, was erudite in the Vedas, and he also, boldly challenges a learned man, why not, other women have the same privilege too? So he, quotes these learned women from ancient Indian texts and says that we need to make them as an ideal or as a model for today's women as well, right? Now he says that the country that and the nation which do not respect women have never become great, nor will they ever be in future. The principal reason why your race has so much deteriorated is that you have no respect for these living images of Shakti. Manu says, where women are respected, there the gods are delighted, and where they are not, there all the work and efforts come to naught. And this is no hope to rise for that family, and there is no hope to rise for that family or country where there is no estimation of women, where they live in sadness. So here he says, very clearly that we need to also educate women, empower them, because if we do not take them along, now you see, let's not forget, he was writing all of this in 19th century. Now 19th century was a time when, a lot of social reformers came to the fore in order to undo the traditional thought that had gripped the society so far. So this once again, is a reminder that how for Swami Vivekananda, while education was important, at the same time for him it was equally important for women to acquire that education. And very interestingly, he takes an example from the ancient Indian context, that is of Gargi, right? There is another very oft quoted and revered figure from ancient India, that is Maitreyi. She was also a scholar in the Vedic times, right? So we have such empowered women in front of us who are part of our heritage, that we must take inspiration from. And this reminder also came from Swami Vivekananda, right? So what we have seen is that Swami Vivekananda's thoughts on education, learning, are actually models that even make sense today, right? He discusses how education is very crucial to a country's growth. He gives us a very philosophical and at the same time a very complex idea of what it means to be educated, and the fact that how it is not restricted to disciplines or institutions, or for that matter, acquiring a particular subject expertise, but instead it lies in mastering the mind, it lies in building a strength of character, it lies in building a value system that would not let you compromise in life during life's challenges. And along with that, we also discussed that how his approach was incredibly secular. He had in mind all the sections of society of India and how to ensure that education reaches them as well, right? So with this, I would say that we would come to an end of today's discussion, but I really wish that all of you, wherever you are, you do your bit today to acknowledge not just your school teachers and your university teachers, for that matter, your parents and whoever else has played a crucial part in your life, has helped you learn, has helped you get to know new things. You must take time out and acknowledge them today. And that is what we do on the Teachers' Day. All the very best. Thank you.